डॉक्टर बाबा साहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी।
Namaste, welcome back. Today we are going to discuss again about the action project in continuation. Friends, we discussed a very detailed description about action project. We discussed regarding the meaning of action project, the steps of action project, the classification of action project, the stages of action project, the limitations of action project, and how a researcher is restricted or how a researcher is working for an action project. Now, when we talk about action project, its phases, its limitations, its activities, its purpose, its successfulness, its need of action research. Now we shall discuss about the phases of action research. What are the phases of action research? Why action research is to be done in different phases? Why people need to conduct action research keeping a focused mind? We all discuss that action research is something where point to point, step by step planning is important, its observation is important, its reflection is important, its acting is important. So now after reflection, why these phases are required, how the phases go about, we will just discuss in brief regarding the phases of action project. The first phase is selecting an area or focus, identifying an area of interest, focus on students, look at both immediate and cumulative effects. You have to first identify the area, you have to first analyze the area, what is the area of focus for action project, where exactly what interests you, what interests the target group, what interests the people or the stakeholders, what is the area, what exactly the area or identified subject or problem is. After you have identified the problem, after you have discussed regarding the issues, discussed regarding the stakeholders, discussed regarding what you have to do, the important part was collecting data. We discussed regarding the data collection techniques and everything. How does it go about? The data collection phase कैसे काम करता है, हमको थोड़ा उसके बारे में जानना है. How we work for this data collection. So first what you have to do was collecting the archival data. Exactly आपके पास क्या है, पुराना record क्या है, existing record क्या है, and then you have to work upon it. So while collecting data, what you have to do is first you will collect archival data. After collecting the archival data, use additional multi-purpose data, multi-sources data which is available to you. At times it might happen that just cut straight forward जो data हमारे पास है, demographic data what we have is not always feasible or used. Along with that, certain supplementary data is required. So what you have to do is you have to focus on how the supplementary data is available, from where you can get that data, from where the data collection of additional information, because at times what happens is we see that certain practice is bad, but we fail to see that why that practice developed, how that practice developed, what is the reason behind that particular action which is taken or which is undertaken by the stakeholders at a particular time or a particular moment. So you need supplement data for circumstantial analysis of a particular situation in a very specific area or very specific node, very specific place. Then regularity is very much important while collecting data. You have to be regular. You cannot miss some days in between and then again start with another data collection. Like after 5 days जब मन पड़ा तब हम उठे सोए, आज कलेक्ट कर लेते हैं, आज के बाद 15 दिन के बाद, फिर कभी 10 दिन के बाद, कभी 5 days के बाद. Not at all done. You have to collect your data regularly. You have to keep a note that if you have planned that your data will be collected alternatively, your data should get collected alternate days. If your data is not to be collected alternatively, you have to plan, but stick to the regulatory mode of data collection. Promote collective ownership of data. Collective ownership of data means one data which is collected by me, one data which is collected by X person, one by Y person, one by Z person. Why this collective data is important? Because at times when different type of data or different modes of data collection are there, at times I might get some different information, X might get some different information, Y might get some different information, and that compilation of data collection might help us for a fruitful action research. So for a fruitful action research, you have to consider the data collected with the various modes of people, various types of people, various categories of samples which you have with us, and then continuously monitor the data. Monitoring the data is important because you have to keep a check. Maybe seasonal factors affect your data collection, maybe health factors collect your data collection, maybe circumstantial factors may affect your data collection. If you are taking up a study on hygienic surroundings, or maybe what to say, some water management techniques, if there is a rainy season or rainy days are there in between where heavy rainfall is there, your data collection might get affected. If you are taking a sample size where personal hygiene you are taking care of, and if your samples get ill, if your samples fail to remain healthy, the data collected at that particular time may be variant from the regular data which was expected to be collected. So you have to monitor the data, that the situation or circumstances while collecting the data at every flat point of time should be common. The situations should not change, the circumstances should not change, and the data collected should give fruitful result. Then only you will understand that what the base was, what change is to be expected. Otherwise there will be variation in the findings of the data collected and not monitored. So monitoring helps that every situation, while this particular execution, this particular implementation, or this particular findings are one and the same. So while collecting data, monitoring the data is also important. So what we discussed in this slide was you have to collect archival data, supplementary data. The data should be collected regularly. It should be with collective ownership, and it should be monitored regularly. It should be monitored in particular, and very regularly it should be monitored. How monitoring of data collection is to be done, how data can be monitored, why monitoring and how monitoring. So count instances, events and artifacts, display the data in tables and charts, arrange data by classroom, grade level, schools, organize for analysis. Monitoring data collection includes these 4 steps. What is to be done? First, you have to count the instances, you have to count the events, as we discussed in the earlier slide, that you have to keep a note of each and every incident. You have to keep a note of every day-to-day happenings that is happening. Then show it in a table, make a table and keep daily entry into that. Why you have to, you know that what is to be found out, you know the points which are to be found out and noted. In that table, day wise or date wise collection or display of tables, charts, whatever is there, you should do. So that gives you clear-cut quantitative record of what findings you are trying to find out, or what data you exactly want to collect. Organize for analysis. You have to arrange your data. When you collect the data, it can be haphazard, but when you have to analyze the data, what you have to do is you have to continuously keep on organizing your data, so that when you have to do the analysis, your data is very much scientific, very much clear-cut, where you have to count or percentage wise collection can be shown, numeric collection can be shown, range wise collection can be shown. So you have to rearrange your data after collecting from the direct samples. You have to arrange it in category wise. Here the classroom, grade or school means they are defining the category. For an academic institution, it can be class wise. For many multiple institutions, it can be school wise. For companies, it can be school wise. For one individual company, it can be department wise. For any social or societal finding or societal data collection, it can be department wise, like for water and hygiene, health practices, food practices, sanitization practices, the drainage practices, the road services, the community services. So you have to divide the departments while monitoring. In this particular department, this data is required, and this data is to be entered in second segment, this is to be entered in third segment, this is to be entered. Fourth segment, this is to be entered, so the monitoring part becomes easier, and so that analysis part is more efficiently done, and very collectively and very clearly it can be done by anyone. The data given by you, the data exhibited by you or displayed by you should give a clear cut idea of what you are trying to find, how you are trying to find, whether what you have found is correct or not, so that the researcher, when the researcher is ranked, or when the researcher is exhibiting his own data collection, people should get an idea, experts should get an idea that how qualitatively the research work is done, how clear cut the database is available, how clear cut the monitoring part is done, which adds to the value of your research work done. Fourth point is analyzing and interpreting data. How you have to analyze and interpret your data. Count instances and artifacts, you have to count, keep a check of it. Display the data, arrange data, and organize data. This is same as monitoring data, because what you have monitored, you have to analyze. This, the empty block given is for the number or numeric value that is to be entered in the analyzed part. Monitoring done, what is analyzed should be given in the empty box. So the flow of your chart keeps on going in a way where what you have monitored, you are writing, what you have monitored, you have entered here, and that is to be displayed in quantitative or qualitative part. Studying the professional literature. Friends, when we talk about any kind of research, maybe conventional research, maybe regular research, maybe action research, we all know that literature is very much important. Review part of literature is very much important, because it helps in conducting your research efficiently. It helps in putting your research to a next level performance, where you can add on to the value of your research. So the research is to be reviewed, the literature is to be reviewed, and then your research is to be done. For studying the professional literature, what steps are to be followed? So identifying professional literature that relates and matches to the interest area of your research. First, you have to identify what kind of research is which you are planning to do. Are such researches done earlier in different areas, in different place, in different country, in different city, wherever? So first you have to find the professionalism of the literature which matches to the interest area of your research study. Gather such research reports, research synthesis, articles, or any videotapes available to you. You have to collect. You have to collect all the literature, similar literature that is available, so that you can collect and compile the literature or research works done which can help or act as a base to your research study. At times it happens that our research is done in your interest area, but it has stopped at a level. So either you begin from that level, or that supports to the research you want to do in a different area or different geographical area or in the different aspect. So it helps. So you have to gather the data. First you find out, then you gather. Third step is to analyze and interpret these materials for understanding and action. You have to analyze why these researches took place, why such kind of researches took place earlier as well, what were the findings at that time. They are going to support to your research, why they are going to support to your research, why you understand that these researches were done, were fruitful. Those researches had to be done, those researches had to be analyzed or moved further, taken further, or they can act as a simple or ideal example for your research to be conducted at a different place. It supports to your area, it supports to your stakeholders, it supports to your best practices, it supports to any kind of change or adoption of technology, practices, anything. So you can analyze the data once it is collected. And fourth stage is determine the promising actions from the data collected, from the data gathered, from the data identified and analyzed. You can determine the actions, what took place in their research, what took place in their times or at those particular years, and what is to be done now. You can give more promising actions, you can give more promising results to the research you are taking place, you can give more promising actions or changes or best practices. So for analysis, what happens that once you know that these kind of studies are done, when you know that these kind of changes have already been brought, you know that you don't have to implement the same action. In action research, we discussed that at times it happens that first approach fails, you have to try with second approach. If second approach fails, you have to try with the third approach. Now what happens is, in earlier research, if three approaches are already practiced, you need not try with those practices. You have to find a way out for the fourth practice. You don't have to repeat those. So you have a base that why you are not adopting those three practices, because it was already experimented, it was already tried, it already failed, and so we are trying, or we are moving up with the fourth kind of different professional analysis and action research which is to be done. So literature is very much important. Professional literature in case of action research works more, because you are implementing, you are trying, you are making people, your stakeholders do something, you are making them learn to do something. So you have to work with studying the professional literature. Now, how to take action, how you have to go about. Combine data analysis with some professional literature, which we already discussed. Select the best options for action. After the literature, you know what actions are to be taken. So in those actions, you have to list down that which are the best actions which can take place, which are possible, which can be tried out. Then craft short and long term action plans. You have to target yourself, you have to target that what are the short term plans for this particular implementation, what are the long term plans which will take maybe 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, which can be immediately done, which can be long termly done. So you have to divide the short term and long term plans. Then implement some actions immediately. You have to implement certain actions immediately. Assess the implementations of selected actions. This is the taking action graph of 5-point scale, where you have to start from combining the data. After combining the data, you know that these actions were taken. Now we will shortlist certain actions. From those actions, you will find out which are short term, which are long term. You know what can be started right now. You know what can be taken into a long term, or a group of short actions can lead to a long term, which can successfully lead to a long term execution of any kind of action. So you will start with the small targets. You will immediately give or implement small actions, and which actions will resultantly develop into a long term execution of the action or execution of the project which was planned or which was decided by you. And then you start analyzing the selected actions. You know that what is done, how it is done. Now that analysis will help you for what? Small actions analysis. If you start, you know where the mistake is going, so you can stop that mistake. You can start by correcting the mistake in the second round of your execution. Or once the execution is done, entire execution is done, you start by analyzing or assessing, so that you can correct yourself where the implementation stage is there, where the implementation part, you know that this goes wrong, you have to plan with strategy B, you have to plan with strategy C. So you start with strategy 5, 6, 7, whatever is required. So assessment of implementation is again required, and this is how action is to be taken while we work with action research. Now, selected questions to be asked in context of action research. What questions you should ask to yourself? What question a researcher should think while going with action research, while planning to do action research? Why action research, right? Why am I collecting this data? You should know that why this data is to be collected, what is the objective, why you are intended to do this kind of research, why you are intended to fall into the interest area of this particular segment. So it should be very much clear by the researcher, for the researcher, that why he or she is collecting this data. How this data is related to the study of the question or the problem you are dealing with. How the data you are collecting, is it feasible for the findings of the problem which you have identified? You should ask this question to yourself, that is the data relevant? Why I am needing this data? Will this data be helpful to the findings of my study? Will this data be helpful in execution of any kind of study? So you know, you have the clarity that your study or your problem is what? For this particular problem, this kind of data, this kind of abbreviations, this kind of answers or this kind of responses from the participants or observation is required. Now, if that is required, then your data will be successfully utilized or useful in the study or in the problem of your action research. So, you should be very clear with why the data is related, how the data is related, whether the data is related to the study or not. What will the data tell us about students' learning and teaching strategies? Now, is your data going to give you some information? This is the base. You should know that once you know that why I'm collecting data, you know that whether the data is useful or not. Will the data give answers to your questions? Will the data be helpful to bring about the desired change or make you understand or know whether this change is required? So the data collected should give certain reflections. It should definitely give certain answers to the questions. So the data should tell us about the strategies. The data should define the strategies. So while preparing the details or questionnaires or question list for data collection, these questions should be in mind before taking up the research. If we talk about what exactly I am collecting, what exactly you are collecting, why, what kind of data will give me the best information about the student learning? It can be sample learning and teaching strategies. You have to consider the students as a sample of the study. You have to consider them as a target group of the study. Now, what kind of data will give me the best information? Again, when you know, you are clear with the problem, you are clear with the issues of the respondents, you are clear with the people, you are clear with the target group, you should be knowing that what data you are going to get, how you are going to get. Will the data be the best collected information for your study? Will the data be the best source of information for the study, or which will help you to plan strategy, that will help you to make or design a strategy? Will this information be useful in bringing the execution you wish to bring? So you should know that what kind of data, which data will be helpful for this particular title or this particular action project, and precisely that data should be collected. No beating around the bush kind of data should be collected, or questions of such kind should be asked. So you should have clarity of data collection. How can I gather on the same question in different ways, from different sources and at different times? This is again very much important. There can be one question for different target groups. There can be one question, similar question for different villages. There can be one similar question for different age groups. There can be one similar question for different kind of technologies. So what happens is, there are different ways of answering to a same question. Looking at the advertisement in a television, for example, or looking at a reality show, or looking at a crime serial, what happens? A child of 5 to 10 years might have different perception. 15 to 25 years might have different perception. 25 or 35 to 50 might have different perception. And 50 plus might have different perception. This is something like, as per the age group, same question, the opinion changes. Different sources, if we talk about. For a media company, the answer to same question might be different, because they are dealing with the soaps, they are dealing with the episodes, they are dealing with the serials or telecasted material. So their perspective to a question will be different as compared to a person who is exactly watching the same thing, a person who is viewing the television. So as an audience, if I am watching a crime based movie or a suspense movie, my perception might be different from a male's perception of 10 years elder to me, 10 years younger to me. My perception of answer will be different from the producer or director of the movie. My perception of the answer might be different from the actor or actress of the movie. My perception can be different from the cameraman of the movie. So what happens is, different sources for a same question. You have one question and you have different type of people for or sources for that particular question. Different times means there are certain researches which might be affected with the say season, with the months, with the mood swings of the people. In summer, if you talk about something very rubbish or something which is not related to the season, if your action research is of that particular kind. The time is not correct, we say. If you are going to a sample where a wife, daughter, a husband, or anybody of the family is hospitalized, will you get proper answer? You will not get. You have to stick to the time part of the study. Also, you should know that what is the appropriate time to ask appropriate question. In summers, we see advertisements related to coolants, cold drinks, AC, refrigerators. In winters, we see advertisement related to tea, hot drinks, hot flavors, soups. So you know the time period where you have to connect with a particular kind of a product, particular kind of a season, particular kind of practical implementation. What helps you to give punctual, correct, and exact data. Third is, where am I going to collect it? From where you are going to collect the data? What kind of sample is needed should be very much clear to you. Do I need to identify the student for long-term tracking? These two questions are very much important, because you know that what sample. If a sample you are asking to somebody whether you are interested in action movies, the age group may be different. You are interested in romantic movies, the age group might be different. You know where your line of study goes, you know where your line of product utility goes, you know where the line of your teaching learning goes. So sample size plus till what time you are going to get connected with the sample is important. So the time period or duration of the sample is very much important. You have to keep these 2 points in mind while you are considering the question of where am I going to collect the data, when am I going to collect it, and for how long. This is also important. How periodic should the data collection be, how much data is needed. So these were certain questions which we should ask as an action researcher to ourselves when we are conducting action research. Now if we have to think as a researcher, scientifically answer to these questions, and then we should go for the action research part. Friends, these were the questions which I thought as an action researcher we all as a scientist should know. As a social scientist researcher we all should know. The session was all about interesting aspects of action research. I hope you all enjoyed with the lecture. Thank you very, very much. See you with the next lecture. Thank you.
स्वाध्यायः परमम्